In today's video, we're going to speak about the things we learned from Chelsea 2, Wrexham 2, little tactical tweaks that we noticed, and just a few intricacies to discuss, as well as which players impressed and what we need to see going forward for the rest of the pre-season games. On the left, we have how the team lined up on paper in that sort of 4-3-3, and on the right, we have how it looked in possession, forming that 3-2-5 or 3-2-4-1. Important notes from this: Reece James was inverting into midfield alongside Lavia. You had Carney, Chukwuemeka and Nkunku as those eights, and we're going to speak about their roles in more detail soon. Colwill was coming in from that left-back role, and he was tucking inside as that left centre-back to form that 3-2 base with Badiashile and Tosin. So Maresca has even come out and confirmed himself that Chelsea were building up in that 3-2 shape. I mean, it was quite evident to see. The shape was very similar to that of Leicester. In fact, it was basically the exact same system in most details. We saw that 3-2 base build-up with the inverted right-back, much like Pereira did last season, which then allowed the number 8s to play slightly further forward in those half spaces, creating that 3-2-4-1. The wingers were high and wide to create that width and stretch the pitch, and the striker movement was able to come deep and then turn and stretch beyond, so to do both roles, as it were. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of markings on this image, but I'm going to attempt to talk you through it and speak mainly about the number 8 role as those wide pocket receivers. Similar to the role of the Leicester number 8s from Maresca, these two number 8s are receive-heavy duties. They offer that +1 in build-up, and they drop into those wide pockets to help play out from the back, but also to create space for others. The purple line between the wide centre-back and the high and wide winger shows how that distance between the two can create that wide pocket of space for that number 8 to drop into, get on the ball and be able to play out from. It's important that the pivot is narrow in this scenario, as again it leaves the outside pocket space available to drop into, and it ensures that the opposition's central midfielders can't cover both the central pivot and that number 8 wide receiver. It's also key that the other number 8 moves in tandem with the wide pocket and receiving number 8. So in this example, if Carney is dropping into that space between the wide centre-back and the winger, it is then important that Nkunku drifts over into that zone 14 area and occupies central zones, so that there is that midfield splitting pass to go through the lines into Nkunku as well. Here is another example of this. As you can see in the yellow, Nkunku has dropped into that +1 spot to receive as the wide pocket receiver. He's not actually received the ball here, but then as you can also see in the red circle, Mark Gu has come deep, and he's actually managed to drag a defender out with him, and this movement of him coming towards is something he kept trying to do, where he'd drag himself towards the number 8, and then he'd try and turn and spin off and get into that space behind, which is a good sign because it shows that he is willing to do that, but it also creates space for the wingers to make inseam runs too. Here you can see one of the shapes that Maresca tries to create in that 3-3-4. So when one of those wide pocket receiving number 8 drops in to form that +1 in build-up, you've got the 3-2 +1 with the number 8. You've then got the 4 attackers. The other number 8 is now more or less alongside the striker in those zone 14 areas to receive the ball between the lines. And then you still have those high and wide wingers who are actually the outlets of the team, higher up than the centre forward and the number 8, to offer that outlet. However, this wasn't as effective against a back 5, but it's important to note these are the sorts of shapes that we're trying to create with that 3-2-5 build-up, but we can also swing it round when adding that +1 into that sort of 3-3-4. So it's flexible in what you're trying to create and how you're trying to do it. This is another example of Carney Chukwuemeka dropping into that number 8 role. As you can see, this is a key feature for Maresca's side. Something that was very interesting is pretty much the pressing structure was exactly the same as Leicester as well, in that sort of 4-1-4-1, with the right back actually able to jump up and invert even out of possession when trying to press and in that pressing scheme. And it also means that that right winger, so in this sense it was Madueke, has to be that more defensive styled winger, playing a little bit deeper in the block, sometimes even looking like a 5-4-1, so that he can cover when that right back does want to push up into midfield, even out of possession. And this was something for who had to do for Leicester last season. And this is also something I predicted that Madueke would be quite good at in my pre-season and my pre-analysis going into Maresca's era. So, key performance in that first half, Romeo Lavia for me. I think he was extremely good to watch in there. His timing of when to jump out of the press and to be aggressive and win that ball back. His duality in that midfield was excellent. He was also looking to play those little incisive passes between the lines and be brave on the ball. For his first proper game back after that long season last season, of course he made that one appearance off the bench last season, but apart from that, this is the first time I've had a proper look at Romeo Lavia in a Chelsea shirt, and I was extremely impressed with the level he came back at, considering he hasn't played much football in the past year. Then we also have Mark Gue, who's also been very well praised online. His pressing intensity and his intelligence on when to drop in and when to run in beyond was extremely good to see. Like I said earlier, his tendencies to run in behind, do the dirty work. Again, he was very good in the press, and he even technically in his little link-up play, it was nice and astute. It was nothing too complex, but it was good to see that he's willing to make those runs, sacrificial runs for other people. He's got the perfect build to be a handful, and he was doing that when running beyond. He was using his arms to sort of hustle and bustle with players and protect the ball, so I'm very excited to see even more of Mark Gue. And of course, I had to mention the boy Tyreek George. He was absolutely brilliant to see again as well. There's, of course, so much more he can brush up on, but it was just the positivity that we saw that was brilliant from George. The goal actually came in the first half from him getting that shot off and it being deflected, where Nkunku then managed to find something in and around the box. He had a few chances where he was almost attracting 2 or 3 players towards him on that left-hand side, holding the width. Again, he's just a very dangerous player, a player that is my favourite coming through the Cobham ranks, and it is worth mentioning how well he played in that first half. That takes us on to that second half side, which had 10 changes. The only player that did not come off, and he actually played 90 minutes, which is a very good sign for him, was Carney Chukwuemeka, who instead of playing in that right central mid, in that sort of right number 8 role in the first half, actually moved over to that left number 8 role, which I do prefer for him playing in that left-hand side half space. Other key details is we did get to see Gusto in that inverted role. We saw Leslie Ugochukwu in that sort of number 8 destroyer role, reminiscent of that Ndidi role last season, and we also get to see Achimpong as that right centre-back, that wide centre-back. Now, tactically, things remain the same, so this is just an image from the second half showing the similar things that we spoke about from that first half, that 3-2 base, also that wide centre-back, making that space for that number 8 wide pocket receiver with the high and wide winger, which you can see with the purple line again, dropping into the pocket, creating that 3-3-4 at times. We did see all the same patterns, just with a new 11 on the pitch. Here is an example of both those number 8s being a bit narrower as well, just so you can see how that box midfield is formed. The pivot is still extremely narrow in the middle of the pitch. You've still got those number 8s providing slightly more width outside of the number 8s, but it's not enough width to play in between the wide centre-back and the winger, but it's forming that box midfield with that 3 at the base. So this is also something that we saw a lot, of course, as well, forming that box midfield, which is very important in the modern game. Key performers to speak about, and I was actually quite impressed with Sterling, even though I'm not the biggest fan of him in a Chelsea shirt. I do think he played quite well, but I'm going to speak more about Angelo, just because I think he offers a different profile to Madueke. Again, I do believe Madueke is going to explode this season, and I do believe Madueke should be the starter, but if you're going to keep Angelo around, he's more of that wide playmaking role. He's a lot more creative with his passing and his variety in how he does so. So he's an interesting player to keep around, and I was impressed with some of the passes and some of the ideas that he has. So it'd be good to see if he and Madueke could compete this season, both offering different spins on that right-hand side role. And then Malo Gusto, who I don't think is getting enough love for how he played in this role. Yes, he was a little bit more expansive in his movement. It was less rigid. But I also think that this was part of the sort of game plan and the game state of that second half when Chelsea did concede 1 and then 2 goals to Wrexham. He was moving around. He was linking play. His ability to drive through the centre of the pitch because of his athleticism also helped Chelsea attacking and sort of breaking the lines with carrying as well as passing, which is a good sign. And he's just someone that I think is so well suited to that role in terms of when that ball breaks, he's got the athleticism to win the ball back. He's strong in the counter press. He's intelligent. A lot of times he was playing those little 1-2 connection passes. Again, he's passing with intent. He's trying to drop off the ball quickly. He's not trying to keep hold of the ball for too long unless he has the idea in his mind that he wants to drive and progress the ball. I think he was very intelligent in that role, and Maresca has even said that he's doing well in that role behind closed doors in training. He said that in that press conference before we'd even seen the game, that he was impressed with Gusto and how he's adapting to that role. So Gusto is one, for me, I want to continue to see him in that inverted role and continue to see him thrive and improve within that role. Now, 2 main things I'm looking out for in the next few games, and as it sort of progresses during this preseason, I want to see more of. One of them is those runs in behind from those wingers to also stretch play to then create more space for those number 8s higher up the pitch. Didn't see enough of those runs in behind the fullback and the centre-back from the wingers. Again, even when the striker was dropping in to create that space, we didn't really see those inseam runs coming inside of the fullback when the winger could have ran in between him and the centre-back. Didn't see enough of that, and that is also a feature of Maresca's play. So hopefully we start to see a little bit more of that as the familiarity grows with the group. And then the connectivity between those number 8s and those wide players. Again, this comes with familiarity, this comes with time, so I'm not expecting to see it straight away. But almost the interchange of something that KDH did last season with Mavididi, KDH being Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. They had that sort of interchangeable quality where if Mavididi drove inside with the ball, KDH would drag outside to sort of create that space inside for Mavididi to drive into. And again, that sort of interchangeability, again, it's within a rigid system, but it creates for more space for others. It's all about creating space for their peers. And that is one of the key duos last season that meant Leicester could play so well. And again, I think there's a lot of players within this system, especially Madueke and Palmer. If Palmer was playing in that right-hand side, number 8, that would be one of the key ones that I could see it happening with. So again, I'm excited to see how that progresses through pre-season and how we see the connectivity improve between the number 8s and their wide counterpart. So, what did you make of Maresca's Chelsea's first outing against Wrexham in that 2-2 draw? We've got another game coming up against Celtic in a few days' time. The same format will be done straight after the Celtic game. I'll get to work on a video like this. And then once we've seen 2 games with the Celtic game, I'm also going to make another video speaking more in depth about the tactical framework that we've seen from Maresca. Because after 2 games, we can start to judge if it's similar all the way through. And then again, I'm going to be doing that for every single preseason game and breaking down every single game tactically, speaking about who impressed me, speaking about players that I want to see a little bit more from, and just speaking about all things to do with those games. So please do leave any questions you have down below, and I'll try and touch on them in the videos. Drop a like, as it really does help the channel, and subscribe if you haven't already.